In our last segment, we learned how to download a data set of baseball players' salaries and turn it into a data table, and then to perform some basic organizations on it like filtering and sorting. Now we're going to learn about a more sophisticated and powerful way of processing the data, namely performing summary operations within groups. This is an important and omnipresent task in data analysis. Let's look again at our salaries data set. Right now we have 24,000 rows, each with a combination of a year and a player. Now we can perform some general summaries of the data. For instance, we can extract the salaries column by doing salaries, $salary. Now I get the column. That means we can find the average salary of all players across all years using the mean function. So let's use mean, parentheses, on this. It's the average across all players or all years. Similarly, we could find the highest salary in any year with max. Similarly, we could find the median with median. Or we could find the average salary in a given year by filtering the data before we extract the column. So if we take salaries and filter, for instance, year ID equals 2000, then we extract the salary column. Now we've only got the salaries from that year. If we take the average of that vector, this turns out to be the average salary of a Major League Baseball player in the year 2000. This gives us a good way to ask questions interactively about our data. But what if we want to look for a trend? For example, how baseball players' salaries change over time. It would be a huge hassle to repeat this line of code for 1985, 1986, 1987, so on, and then combine all of those. We really want as a way to perform this summary operation of averaging within each year for every year in the data set. It turns out the data.table package makes that easy. Let's create a new data table called summarized.year. So what we'll do is we'll take salaries, and just like we're going to subset, we put brackets, nothing before the first comma, and this time we put mean of salary, saying we want to average the salary, but now we say by year ID in quotes. So here this is saying what operation we want to perform. This is what summary we want to do. And this says we'll take the mean of the salary column. But here this third part is we don't want to do it just for once for the whole data set. We want to perform the summary within each year. So we're computing the mean salary within each year. So this is first a comma, then what we want to do, then how we what groups we want to do it in. So let's run this line. So this message in red is a warning. It's basically complaining that baseball players are paid too much. But you can ignore it right now. It doesn't have any effect on our results. Let's look at what ended up in summarized.year. You see, this is now a new data.table with one column for year and one column which is called V1. And what happened is every year has its own row, and what's here is the result of this summarizing operation, the mean salary within that year. So it's the result of the expression we put in this column. But what if we wanted to give the column a more useful name, like average? We can do that by changing what we put in our summarizing expression. Let's go back to this line and say, instead of just mean salary, say list. List means what column we want to define. Average equals, and then have an end parentheses after this. Now we're saying salaries, we create a column called average containing the mean of the salaries and perform this within each year. Let's run this line of code. Ignore the error again, the warning again. Now you see we've named that column average, which is more helpful. But our summary operation doesn't have to stop there. We can create two columns at the same time. For example, one for the average and one for the maximum salary. So what we do is, here after list average mean equals salary, create a second one, which is maximum equals max salary. So now let's look at what the result is, and you see we've created two columns along with the summarizing year. We have average and maximum. You can also add other columns as well, the minimum salary in each year, the standard deviation salary of each year. Anything you put in this list will end up being a column. Now you can group your summaries by any column of the data, not just the year. For instance, you could summarize within each baseball league. There's two leagues being the American League and the National League. So you could do summarized league equals salaries, and then whatever we want to perform, which is still this, let's say we do this averaging and maximum, but say by league ID. You can see here we have our league ID we can summarize by instead of year ID. Notice that now that the analysis is spread across two lines, you'll have to hit Command Return twice to perform it. Now let's see what's in the results. Now you can see there's only two rows, one for the American League, one for the National League. So now we can see the average salary and the maximum salary within each league. We've already summarized by year and by league. We could also summarize by team. So we do that by taking this line, could copy it, team, change this to team ID, and now we can see one row for each team in the league. Note that this output is itself a data.table, just like the input was. You can process it or sort it just like you could any other. For example, you could filter it to look only at a particular range of years. So if we take summarized.year, there's our summary of salaries within each year, and we tell it to filter only for the years greater than 2000, we get a smaller subset of that summary. Similarly, we could sort it for instance, to find out which teams are the highest paying. We would do summarized team, order by average, and now we've sorted all the teams based on their average salary from 1985 through 2013. Finally, we can group by more than one column in our analysis. Let's say we want to see the average salary within each year separate for the two leagues. So we're summarizing by the league and year combination. To do this, we're going to change the by argument of the data table to be a vector. So here, where we were just summarizing by the year. Okay? Let's change by to be a vector, C denoting a vector, of both year ID and league ID. Now parentheses to end the vector. And we'll call this summarized year and league, as we're summarizing by both columns. So now let's look at the contents. Notice it has one row for each combination of year and league. One for 1985 American League AL, one for 1985 National League. And is the average for each of these classes. You could go even farther and view the analysis within each team within each year. So that could be simply change league ID to team ID. Now you can see that every row is a combination of a year and a team. Now, any of these summaries could be used as the result of an analysis, for example, as a table in a presentation or paper, but they also make visualizing trends much easier. For example, let's say we want to examine the trend of how salary changes over time. We could produce a plot of all the points of the original salaries dataset, all 24,000 combinations of players and years. For that, we'd use ggplot2. So we could do library, ggplot2, and then ggplot on our original data, salaries. Put it on the x-axis, year, and on the y-axis, salary. Put it as a point. So in this graph, we can see a positive trend. But what we can really see is the range of salaries. Within this mass of points, it's not possible to tell what the average is for each of these years. So if we really want to see the trend at how the average actually changed over time, we can instead plot our summarized data. We'll get this from, remember, a summarized year that shows the average. We have the year in one column and the average salary in another. So if we instead ggplot that, we choose that as what we'll plot, summarized year. Tell it we want year ID in one column and on the x-axis and average on the other. Usually if we have just one curve, we'll put a line. Now we can see the trend of the average over time. This comes directly from the summarized data. Now we have the average for every year salary in Major League Baseball. We could even go further. Since we have it summarized by league and by year, we could take summarized year league and put that into the plot. Summarize year league, we still put year ID on the x-axis, average on the y, but now we color based on the league ID. And now we can see two separate lines, one red for the American League, one blue for the National League. Notice that data.table and ggplot2 have a natural synergy. Data.table lets you summarize your data to the extent that you need so you can visualize what you want with ggplot2. Together they work as two powerful tools for exploratory data analysis.